Welcome to the Being Known podcast.
Late as usual.
But there's no shame.
Oh, there's shame.
It's a shame sandwich.
That's right. There is so much shame walking through these doors right there. There are people walking out of the room.
And that's where the real shame should be.
See you tomorrow. They said
Or
no, we
not.
won't.
Yeah, they just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
here we go.
Okay.
I'm thinking we should play a little game.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
wait. How y'all doing? You good? Good time? Good time? Okay. I'm just checking. Just checking.
You good?
I'm good now.
Okay. Okay, we're going to play Who is Most Likely to... Okay, you guys
Can we
have
sit
two...
down?
Yeah, let's sit down.
You don't have to. You be like
You're the hostess.
So you guys have two options. I'm going to say who is most likely to, and then say a thing.
You need to keep the microphone here. Don't talk.
However
Right.
I want. Okay.
This is what it's like working with Amy. Life with Amy.
You have two options. When I say the thingy, you can either point to yourself if you think you are most likely, or point to the other.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see how it goes. Okay. Who is most likely to forget their own birthday?
Forget what?
Quick. Oh my gosh. Forget.
Who's most likely to not hear very well?
Who's most likely to mess
To
up the
forget
question?
their own birthday.
To forget their own birthday? Oh, this dude,
Oh.
He remembers his birthday. He reminds you of his birthday. He reminds us of his birthday.
He doesn't let anybody
And then
forget.
we don't forget his birthday.
Oh, yes, you do.
No, we
Who-
don't. I forgot one time. It was a day
Yeah.
you got your hair cut that day.
You forgot one time.
I forgot one time. I never
And I
again.
had told you
because
about
of the
it the day
shame that came
before.
at me when you.
Go ahead.
It's supposed
Okay.
to be rapid fire kind of
Sorry.
thing, but who is most likely to make a joke and be the only one laughing?
Well, because he usually is making fun of either you or me.
This is true. So
Right. Now, if he's making fun
No,
of you,
you're
then we're
laughing
both
if it's
laughing.
me.
Okay, I get it.
Yes, you're laughing if it's me. Who is most likely to show up late to their own party? Oh my gosh! I would be, because I have social
you would
anxiety,
be.
so I would
Yeah.
be late. No, you
would
guys, none of us can be late, even if we try. Okay. Who is most likely to accidentally send a text to the wrong person? Yeah.
Well, that's because you have to be texting like 87 people 13
Yeah.
times a day.
Yeah.
Right. So he comes by it honestly.
We have two more. Who is most likely to forget what they were saying mid-sentence? I don't like this game.
Who's most likely?
It's too revealing.
Who's most likely to have trouble reading cards right in front of themselves?
And lastly, who is most likely to try and fail at a TikTok dance?
To try and fail at
To
what?
try and fail at a TikTok dance.
Probably me. I don't know what a TikTok dance is. What is a TikTok dance?
So a dance on TikTok, like a thing.
There's a dance on TikTok?
How's it go?
Oh, there are more. No.
Wait, can you
no.
show us?
Show us.
No.
Show us how you do it.
Come on.
No.
If you
No.
Wow. Did you come up with these questions?
So it must be you.
It must be
I think
you.
you're the one.
Yeah.
She just tried and failed at the TikTok dance.
Welcome to the Being Known podcast.
There you go.
Wow.
It is really exciting to be here tonight and to get the chance to record the podcast in front of a room full of people that I just have to say, I've had so many encounters today already with so many individuals that have been so kind, and some of them have gone very deep. And, I sit in my basement in a closet and record this thing, and then people actually listen to it. And it's just a really cool thing. It's really, really cool. So tell me your name. Come here, Richard. Sorry, can
Go.
Richard, come here. Do something with me.
Yes.
Ready?
Yeah. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go down and I go and lay down where the wooddrake rests and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. And for a moment, I feel the grace of the world and am free.
Right?
Right on.
Awesome.
Right on.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Can we take a selfie with you guys?
With you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Can we do that? Okay.
Yeah.
You got to take it. You got to stand. You got it?
I hope so.
This is going to take about 13 minutes. Just talk amongst yourselves.
Similar to the
Okay,
game.
here we go.
We forgot to prepare the podcast material, so we're stalling.
What's he say?
I don't know what he's
I'm
saying.
gonna go.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
Okay, can you guys hold together here? Wait, I can't. Okay, now one over here. Okay, now a silly one. Thank you. All right. We should start.
We should start, because we have to be out of the church here in like,
Yeah.
This is similar to how it goes on Friday mornings.
oh my gosh. Okay.
All right. Ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Dude, you start.
I know. Just
Okay.
give me a second. I
Okay.
like to let it
No.
breathe just for a second.
Yeah. I like to breathe too, but we don't need to be out of breath.
Welcome to the Being Known podcast with my friend, Dr. Curt Thompson and Amy Cella.
And my friend, Amy Cella, and the most beautiful man in the world. Okay.
We are here to discover and explore what it means to be truly known. Hey, Curt.
Hey, Pep. Amy.
Hey, guys.
So we are starting today live.
That's so awesome.
It is so awesome.
Yeah.
I have a little button that does cheers. We are starting today season 11 of the Being Known podcast. Yes.
Yep.
With Dr. Curt Thompson,
Right. MD.
MD.
You know.
So this season, we are going to be discussing rupture and repair.
Right.
And I've actually gotten a lot of questions today on this subject, just kind of randomly throughout the day from you all via text. And so I think it's obviously a timely and conversation that people are ready to jump into.
And some of you may be aware that we had addressed this topic on a number of different occasions throughout the number of different seasons that we've had. And what we hope to do in the course of this particular season is to take a deep dive into this, with each episode really exploring different elements of it that we think are really important. And we also would say that in some respects, this is important for us to do, particularly because of the time that we find ourselves in. It's no secret that we find ourselves on the brink of lots of different things, whether it's in our kitchen or whether it's at the election polls in a couple of weeks. And we really want to tackle this in a way, because we think in many respects, the entire arc of the biblical narrative is one long story of repairing ruptures. It is a story in which multiple ruptures are repaired over and over and over again, and it's also a story in which a big rupture is repaired by a large repair. And that all of us, in many respects, are walking through our days as agents of repairing ruptures. That so much of our trauma is really about the experience of unrepaired ruptures. And we'd like this episode to be a bit of a flyby, an overview of a number of the different things that we're going to eventually cover in more deeper well exploration over the course of the next several episodes. But we would just like to begin with this kind of overview of it here today. So I think part of what you're going to hear are a number of different reflections from all three of us about where we've experienced ruptures and repairs and some of the nature of how ruptures emerge, some of which are often pretty surprising to us, but also what we can begin to think about doing in terms of the concrete ways that we can begin to repair things. And we really think, too, that it is helpful for us in terms of the theme of this particular conference, because for many of us, ruptures are the very source of how it is that our imaginations are shattered, how it is that it's hard for us to imagine things.
That our imaginations are what? I'm sorry.
Shattered.
Shattered.
Yeah. It's hard for us to imagine things because of our ruptures, and so it's hard for us even to imagine how we're going to repair this. In many respects, we don't even think of repair being an option, let alone how we go about doing it. So we want to begin to explore that a little bit today. Any other thoughts, reflections about that as we get started?
I just thought about when you said your imagination being shattered. A quick story, really quick story. I was guest starring on a pilot television show called Suddenly Susan in the 90s. And it was with Brooke Shields. And we had a scene where we were dancing, and I had an idea. And we were running late, and the director was, I wasn't really privy to what was happening, but he was obviously stressed out. And I'm using my imagination, thinking about something that I wanted to try in this scene. And so I go over to him, and I said, hey, I'd really like to try this. And like in front of the whole cast and crew, he says, shut up. And he called me stupid. So there goes your creativity and your imagination right there, right? That shattered, imagination.
Right. So you all get that, right? And each of us sitting here can have some sense of what that's like.
Right. And it just shuts you down.
Right.
It just shuts you down. To be demeaned and belittled like that, especially when you're trying to do something that's a risk, that's creative, and then you put yourself out there and just whack.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You can tell that y'all are feeling things, right? Because this is also what happens with rupture. We've all been in moments where we witness someone else experiencing a rupture. And part of how it is that when we read in the text that let's make mankind in our image, it also means that when mankind has ruptures, it doesn't ever just happen between two individuals. It's also going to ripple through other folks, not least of which being those people who have any degree of witness to what that rupture is about or how that feels. And so we see that even many of us here, we can sit and think about the number of ruptures that we have as individuals. But if we were to pause and say, how many other people do you think have been affected by the rupture that you've experienced? We would start to collect other names, and we would start to see that the whole is larger than the sum of its parts. Any of us have ever had or seen some kind of a rupture take place in a public venue where one person creates a rupture with another person, but in the presence of lots of other people. We recognize that even though it's taking place between two people, it's not really taking place just between two people. And so the repair, even though we might think, oh, those two people need to go off and work that out, we recognize we'd like them to do that because the whole notion of the rupture is making me so uncomfortable that I don't know what I'm supposed to do, even though I've kind of been a drive-by shooting victim, if that makes sense. Other reflections about any of that so far? So one of the other things that I would want to say is that it's easy for us to when we think about the topic of rupture and repair, we initially and immediately tend to imagine the rupture as being, oh, these are bad things that are happening, and we're really wanting to fix things that are wrong, which is not an untrue way or an unhelpful way to think about things. But one of the things that we want us in over the course of this season, want us to begin to imagine that in many respects, though we imagine it in the same way that physicians imagine pathology, oh, this is a problem that needs to be solved, this is a diagnosis that we make in order for us to treat, all of which is necessary and helpful. We want us to begin to imagine that repairing ruptures is the way in which we create beauty and goodness in the world, every bit as much as the way in which we create beauty in those places where it's easy to do so. And so we often turn to the neurobiology data that looks at how when neurons are cut and then those neurons are repaired and are brought back together, that their signaling to each other over time becomes even much more resilient than the signaling was before the rupture, before the cut took place in the first place. And we see that when relationships are repaired in ways that they need to be and that are done helpfully and thoroughly, those relationships necessarily are more flexible, more adaptive, more energized, more coherent, more stable after the repair of the rupture than they even were before the rupture. And so we want this to be a season of hope. We want this to be a season in which we anticipate that we are becoming missional, that we are walking out of our doors every morning looking for ruptures to repair. This is what happens when Jesus comes to find us. He's looking for a rupture to repair, and he's not just seeing us as problems that need to be solved. One of the things that's also important for us, I think, to consider is that this whole notion of us repairing ruptures and experiencing them, I don't like the idea that it's happened, but it's important for us to remember that we're all part of this grand narrative that begins on the first page of the Bible. By the time we get to the third page of the Bible, what happened between Adam and Eve is the same thing that happens to us every single day, in large ways and small ways. And important to recognize, how many of us, when you think about the rupture that happened in Genesis chapter 3, we think, well, the rupture happened when they ate the fruit. How many of us, that's what we think? Two people think. You're not, gosh, y'all read your Bibles? Okay, how many of it, where did the rupture begin? Long before this. But where? How long before? The Hebrew writers were brilliant. Adam was given a task. And what was the task? To care for the garden and to protect it. One might wonder, what was the snake doing in the garden in the first place? Whose job was it to keep the snake out of the garden? Why was the snake even available to have a conversation? You notice that rupture begins long before any fruit gets eaten, long before a conversation begins. Are you with me? And what this also means is that ruptures can take place within our own experience long before we are aware that a rupture is even happening. Because they were naive, we can be naive, and in fact, we had one of these experiences last night and this morning.
We did.
Am I going to tell it?
I think you should. Considering it's your story.
No, you shouldn't.
Are you going to tell it?
No, you tell it.
I tell it. Okay. So,
do you want me to tell it?
Well, it's a little embarrassing.
You can do it.
I wish we weren't doing this live. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you all arrived on Tuesday.
Yes.
Right? Of last week.
Or
it feels like that. No, it's not. You arrived on Tuesday.
Yes.
And you were going to come here yesterday to start to do work to get ready for today.
Yep.
And we haven't seen each other. We haven't been in person in a long, long time. I was thrilled that they were coming. They're staying at my home. It's like I'm giddy that they're here. And so they're here, and we were going to have dinner last night together when they got home, and then they didn't show up for dinner or later. And then it was like, 8:30, 9:30, and you came in the house, and there was a part of me that was pissed. And I didn't say this, but there was a part of me that's like, where have you been?
Yes.
Now, okay. Now, I think I said this in the car this morning, right? So I was aware. I'm aware, you were here working till like from 1 until 9 o'clock, doing all the work that they have to do to get ready for today. I know this, and there is a part of me that does not care that they were working here all day. There was a part of me that was mad that they weren't home. Are you with me? Not that you ever had anything happen like this. But what I eventually came to was like, oh my gosh, already in the privacy of my mind, I'm creating a rupture. Are you with me? Like, I'm telling a story that really is about longing. That really is about, like, I had this story in my head, like, oh, they're going to do the work, they're going to go home, and we're going to have dinner, and we're going to have dinner together, and we're going to have plenty of time to go over the work we're going to do today, and all these kinds of things. And so it's an example of how somehow the serpent shows up in the garden, unannounced, in my head. And it's not until I start to name things that I'm already, like, we get in the car this morning at 5:30. And I'm not really okay because I don't like these things that are banging around in my head. So I had to say something.
So oftentimes, I'm not going to say we, I'll speak for myself, I will minimize it and think, I know they were working. Right. So I'm not going to say anything because they were working and they would have preferred to be home. I mean, not really preferred to be, but maybe preferred to be home with you. And so the fact that you said something this morning, so with the temptation to minimize it because it's small, it's insignificant, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah. So, how many folks resonate with this notion that things happen in the privacy of your mind and you just decide you're going to minimize it? Right? No, and you tell yourself the story that you know that you shouldn't be bothered, you shouldn't be upset, you shouldn't be all those things, and the moment that you say that, you send it underground, and now you're going to have to burn energy to contain it. Other reflections? Anything else?
And you may not even know it. I mean, you're not
you
even aware that you're burning it.
Right. And many of us grew up in households where we learned. Right? I don't know how, I've said this publicly before, like, I think that in Ohio, where I was born, parents their children went home with them from the hospital, like, with one disciplinary rule. And that is, you stop your crying or I'm going to give you something to cry about. And despite the fact that logically it doesn't even make a lot of sense once you think about it, there is this sense in which you're not really allowed to have the feeling. And so you practice not having feelings. You practice not paying attention to things. You practice not paying attention to the ruptures that happen. And all of our trauma is ultimately a collection, often of micro ruptures that are never repaired, that we then collect over time, such that by the time the large rupture gets here, we don't really know what to do with it because we've had so little practice knowing what to do with the small ones.
Yeah. And, speaking of small ruptures, so I have you mentioned the top of the podcast that I get a lot of texts and a lot of things, and so I have an Apple Watch, and my Apple Watch gives me my Google Mail alert, my Google Chat alert, my text alert, and I feel like there's another alert.
The Holy Spirit talks to you through your watch.
The Holy Spirit talks to me through my Apple Watch. And so it's very useful to me when I'm working. It's not so useful to me when I'm having a conversation with my wife. We'll be having a conversation, and my watch will buzz, and I'll automatically look at it, and there's been a rupture. We're no longer connected. She's feeling unimportant and not listened to. She's feeling like my watch is more important to me than she is. And I think that's ridiculous. No, I'm kidding. And I will, in the beginning, when this started happening, and I would see her kind of, I was kind of like, I'm still listening. I hear you. I got distracted for just a second, and she's, nope, conversation's done. I'm not important here. And so it took me a little while to realize how I was hurting her and to come up with a plan and to stop wearing my watch in the evenings especially, to shut off some of those texts and things, and to try to start repairing that. And it wasn't immediate. And still occasionally, if it's, like an afternoon or something, we happen to see each other, I'm working, but I come in, it's like a dog getting shocked. And I'm trying so hard not to look at it. So, and just try to stay focused, like right here, right? Yeah.
No, could you do that again, please? Yeah, I mean, I think we've all had these moments of, first of all, kind of discovering that there have been ruptures that we weren't even aware of, because they've been brought to our attention, or something happens and we become aware of ruptures that have happened to us that heretofore we weren't even aware. I think one of the things that community does, I mean, you've heard it expressed already today on a couple of occasions, where in the course of people telling their story and hearing the response of other people, it comes so much more strongly about them than they're even feeling. And it's only then that they discover that they have been carrying an ocean of rupture with them that they have up until this point been ignoring, because that's the most safe thing that they can do. It's the way that they've learned to survive their life. And for many of us, even now, we recognize that we live in a time in which we have increasing rates of depression and anxiety, which, okay, it's good for business. I get that. But we wonder why do we have increasing rates of depression and anxiety? Why are we having increasing rates of suicide in certain sectors of our population? We wonder, why is there so much rancor? Why are we feeling so fragile? Why do we seem so quick to only congregate with those who think like we think, who act like we act, who look like we look? How is it that these things are happening? And one way I would invite us to consider that is supporting all of those features is our awareness of the rupture, the collection of ruptures that we all carry, but that we don't really necessarily have an easy access. We don't have easy access to tools with which we can repair these ruptures. And one of the things that we're going to do over the course of this conversation, over the course of our podcast season, is to talk about concrete ways in which we can begin to do this. I think one of the things that kind of influenced our imagining that this conference's theme would be from imagination to incarnation is this whole notion we just mentioned earlier, that ruptures that are unrepaired really fracture our capacity to imagine a future of wholeness. Ruptures that are unrepaired fracture our capacity to imagine a future of wholeness. Now, this is linked to a lot of different things, even from a neuroscience standpoint and a relational standpoint, some of which has to do with the fact that if I have an unrepaired rupture, think about it. If in order for me to flourish, I need to be doing that in community with other people, ruptures, by definition, tend to cut me off even further from the people that I need to be with to flourish. And if I need you to flourish, I need you even more to repair ruptures. And if that repair is not happening, I'm already going to be impaired in my capacity to flourish because of the part of me that is ruptured and is cut off from the repair that I need. Does that make sense? And so now I'm down half a tank, as it were, but still have to be able to function as if I'm going to go on a whole tank of gas. But I don't have it. And so there is this law of decreasing capacity over time that I carry around with me. I remember when it was 2018, and the last of my 3 brothers who passed away from cancer had died, which meant that I was the only living member of my family of origin. And I remember driving to the interment of my oldest brother who had passed away, and commenting to Phyllis on the way to this funeral. I'm like, gosh, I'm aware that for the last couple of weeks since he's passed away, I may have said this before, I am a gathering storm of rage. And you come to discover that you're not really able to become aware of things until certain people are dead, as it turns out in the world. And once that happens, you become acutely aware, not even of what the things are that have caused it, you just become aware of all the affect that's coming up from behind that you've been really, really working hard to not pay attention to. Are you with me? And so it's not just, oh, there was this one thing that happened. There are a collection of things. And many of us who are here today, we come to these 2 days with collections of things. And we come with collections of things that perhaps we weren't even aware that we were coming with until we start to have this conversation. Or you've heard from Jessica. You've heard from David. You've heard from Betty. You've had things awakened in the music. You've heard from the panel that has spoken about what happens when their stories are revealed to others. Even now, some of our stories are being revealed in the course of the day that we've commenced so far. And our longing is for us, over the course of this time, to really be able to name those ruptures that we have experienced, whether we are the ones who've caused them, whether we are the ones who've kind of been in the crosshairs of those ruptures, and then be able to do the effective work of repair over time.
Or whether we've done them to ourselves as well, right?
Right. Say something about that.
You know, can you answer your phone? You want me to get it for you? I'm sorry, that was not rude of me.
Okay, wait, let's watch one person as they walk out. Dude, you know, look, I wouldn't have said that if you hadn't led the way. I just want to say.
Sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say until I hear it. I'm not kidding.
Okay. No, I know you're not.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about...
Yes. I do some damage to myself. And we've talked about this before, but I will allow a repeated voice in my head that will say, "You're an idiot. You're such an idiot." You know, it'll be a situation where I feel like for whatever reason I've fallen short on something. I haven't hit the mark, and that's the first thing that comes into my head. Now, we'll talk about how to go about repairing something like that, but I'll tell you from experience, it's not by thinking yourself out of it. And for me, I'm not saying that I've completely conquered this, but a lot of the repair that I have been able, and we talk about there are varying degrees of repair, right? And so a lot of the repair that I've been able to experience internally on this "you're an idiot" thing, I don't even like saying it, is when I've talked to you guys about it. And when I've talked to Nell about it, and I've talked to, and I remember the first time I told you guys about it, and you both looked at me like what? Like, how is that even possible? And that's the feeling that I got from you. And that was a step towards repair for me. So speaking it, naming it, and then having your reflection back to me, and what you see in me is the way that I've been able to find some repair in that.
No, it's pardon me. Thank you. It's easy for us to think, oh my goodness, we have ruptures, and this is going to be great because we're going to hear a podcast season on how to repair these. And we give you homework, and you're just going to go do this. As if it's something you're just going to go do. And I think it's fair to say that the repair of ruptures, I don't know that there's a harder thing for us to do in the world. And, ruptures begin at birth. Like, there is a rupture that happens. And, one of the ways, again, we've said this before, that we've not been able to get cooperative newborns to conduct interviews with them. They're not giving it up. They're not talking. They're very resistant to these kinds of studies. But, you ask the newborn, so what was it like coming through the channel? And they're so shell-shocked they won't tell you. But you can imagine what it would be like if they were able to do this. In other words, they have undergone what we'll talk about later in this series. They've undergone what we would call a limit-setting rupture. For those of you who have children, no matter how old they are, if they're 3 or 13 or like 47, right? You have these limit-setting ruptures where you say, you may have the red cup with milk or the blue cup with milk, but you may not have juice, and they don't like this. There is a rupture, but the rupture is intended for growth. Where was the first rupture in the biblical narrative? Where was the first wound in the biblical narrative? It's on the second page of the Bible. When God causes Adam to fall into a deep sleep, and he wakes up with a chest wound, right? But he wakes up with a chest wound, the result of which is beauty that leads to poetry and song. The intent of the limit-setting rupture is for the purpose of integration. It's for the purpose of wholeness. Okay, what are you looking at?
No, we've talked about this before, so I don't want to necessarily. That's the picture of this kintsugi, of the Japanese art of kintsugi. I'm sure a lot of you know what that is, and there's something that's broken. It's a clay vessel, a vase, a bowl, whatever that's broken, and the repair of that clay vessel is done with gold in the cracks, which then the ruptured thing, the broken thing, in the end is more beautiful than it was before the break, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And in many respects, we would say if Adam were to wake up and, he gets eventually to the poetry and song, but he's like, it's kind of hard for him because he's got the chest wound, right?
Yeah.
And there is this sense in which, in order for him to actually experience how one encounters the repair of a rupture, somebody else has to be in charge of that. In the same way that when newborns come into the world, they've experienced a rupture. They didn't ask to come out of the uterus and into this space that is, bright and cold. But when they do, someone is there to find them, to see them, to soothe them, to bring them into a space of wholeness, despite the fact that the rupture has taken place. Somebody else is in visualizing repair for them when they can't visualize repair on their own. They can't do it. Are you with me? And for us who would like to think that we can just get a set of homework assignments that will tell us how to go home and repair ruptures, that's not how we do it. We learn to do it by virtue of someone being present with us and enabling us to begin to do the repair work within our own stories first. It's only when Adam experiences that he has the chance to imagine what it's like to then go on to do repair work that he needs to do. I can't really do repair work because you give me a homework assignment, here's how you go do this. I first have to have it because you two come to find me. So like even in our conversation this morning at 5:30 in the car.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that, like, I went to bed last night and I'm thinking, like, no, look, we got work to do. I can't be bringing this up at dark 100 when we're just trying to wake ourselves up on the way to the church. This, like, maybe we'll talk about it next week. Maybe we'll talk about it in 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, like, no, I can't, because I cannot afford to be burning this energy containing this. Are you with me? But part of what enabled me to do it is because we have 12 plus years of track record of doing the work of repairing ruptures. And so I'm not just taking, I hope we can pull this off on the way to the church. I'm speaking to two people who over time have welcomed my brokenness, who have been willing to repair ruptures that I've been responsible for. And that leads me to be able to do this, to say, this is what my longing is. This is what I did last night in my head that was creating trouble for me that I still now have. And when you all come to find me in the car, even at 5:30, it changes my day categorically. And I'm now having a very different, I can assure you, if we don't have that conversation this morning, this is still nagging me throughout the course of this day. Does that make sense? And we wouldn't say, like, well, that's not even such a huge thing. And I would say, right, it's not such a huge thing, which is why we take those not very huge things, we bury them, and we collect them by the hundreds. And so what becomes just a few ounces now becomes like several tons of rupture that we have not worked to repair. And what we really long to do is to leave no stone unturned, such that we're practicing these in small ways so that those small things never become big things.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
And I have thoughts about the way, like, when we were in the car, you just said, I want to name a couple of things, which it wasn't like you didn't attack us and say you worked so late and that, it was just that you named it. And then I'm also mindful that it doesn't always go when we try to do repair. So there's that, and then the idea that you said, if we don't, if there's rupture that is ignored, then our ability to imagine is tainted. And so the idea that it doesn't always go as and we've talked about this a little bit, but it's many years ago, it became clear that there was repair that needed to be done with my dad. And so I went on a repair journey, and I met with him, and he heard it, and I wouldn't say he received it, but he heard it, and that was kind of the end of it. He was like, thank you, and that was the end. Now,
Don't you just love that?
so satisfying.
I'm here to repair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Now, are you ready for dinner?
Yeah.
No. But, so, and this was many years ago. I was maybe 17. But in doing it, it was not my freedom. My freedom was not contingent on my dad's response. And then after, it took a while, but then I would realize, okay, I was disappointed by his response, but I was disappointed because of the longings that I had in me.
Right.
Which I didn't even, if somebody would have said, that rupture, you really are longing for a closer relationship with your dad. I'm like, no, I'm not. But then when I had that conversation, regardless of his response, I was aware. I'm like, oh, yeah, of course you want that with your dad.
Right. We often say that we are people of great longing, and we are people of great grief. And we are that because we would say, well, that's because that's the trajectory of the story of the biblical narrative. We are made in God's image as people of great longing. He has a longing to make us, to be with us, to rule with us. And as his image bearers, we also have great longing for all kinds of things. And we get to the third page of the Bible, and the longing is shattered, and we become people of grief, and that's the rest of the Bible. And we think, oh, if we're going to repair the rupture, then we're going to start with the longing. But as it turns out, I can't even get to the longing until I name my grief first. And it is, though, that it is the work of repair in which sometimes that repair isn't everything I want it to be. Anybody here had that experience? Where you start down a path where you long to repair something, and it is insufficient to what your longing is about. But sometimes the very act of beginning to repair is the very thing that awakens you to how deep the longing is. It wasn't even until I started, I was aware of, my murderous thoughts last night in the kitchen when you guys were late. No, they weren't that murderous. Okay. But you have this sense of things aren't okay. But even in beginning to think of I want to talk about this, the very notion of moving toward you is what starts to awaken me to, oh, this isn't about them being late. This is about wanting to be in a room with you both. And this is about, I haven't seen you in months. And I want you to be in my kitchen.
It was really about Amy not knowing how to use Waze.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, you got to tell the story. You got to tell the story.
No, he doesn't have to tell this story.
So.
No.
Okay, yeah, go.
Phyllis lets us, Curt's wife Phyllis lets us borrow her car for what was going to be an hour.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll drive as long as you can be a really good co-pilot. She says, yeah.
They're going to be on my side.
I got Waze. Like, okay, you got Waze. So we're driving home last night, and this one, instead of paying attention, we're coming up on the turn. Oh, there it is! Boom! So we fly over that way. We missed 3 turns, easy. We got on the wrong freeway at one point.
I was paying attention.
All because you were talking.
I was paying attention. No, you were talking.
Well, that's probably true, but...
Yeah, who are they going to believe?
You were listening.
I was listening to you.
You should know better. You had one job to do. Had nothing to do with listening. It was looking at the little blue line and telling me when to turn. We'd have been home a lot. And then Curt would have felt so much better about things because we'd have been home.
And we would have had nothing to talk about tonight.
So we see where the real rupture began.
Yes.
May I just say. In any event.
Yes.
Over the course of our time together, what is our time, by the way?
We've got about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. We really want us, over the course of the next few weeks, as we are recording this, we want our listener, we want you all to, first of all, consider that Jesus also considers it a mission to repair every single rupture. And he wants us to be fearless in our mission to do so. Evil wants us to be terribly afraid of entering into the process of repairing rupture. And it will tempt us in all kinds of ways. First of all, to be discouraged that we can even do it. Then it will tempt us to believe that if we're going to do it, it has to be done perfectly. then evil will tempt us to think that if we're going to do it, it's going to be done quickly. Then we're going to be tempted to believe that if we're really doing it well enough, then there will be complete resolution with the person with whom we want to have the repair, which we know is often not the case. You follow me? And here's the thing. We will anticipate all of these different ways of how rupture will not be done perfectly, and we will then not enter into it at all. Because I'd rather not enter into something, I'd rather not enter into it at all, rather than enter into it and be terribly disappointed. But how many of us have longed for relationships to be repaired, that because our imaginations have been truncated and shattered, we don't consider that it's even a possibility. And so we turn away from it. Instead, now I'm going to burn all kinds of energy trying to cope with this. And that is energy that I do not have available for me to create the icons of beauty and goodness in the world that God has been preparing for us before the foundation of the world. And so at this time in our own personal lives, where we find ourselves in this moment in the world's history, we want to be those people who are repairing ruptures to whom the world looks and sees how we love one another because we're doing this, and glorifies our Father in heaven. And so we want to be hopeful about this. We want us to look forward to this season with anticipation. And this is just a homework. We often have homework assignments that we give people.
Application.
Application, right. So which one is it? What is our application, Amy?
Pepper.
What am I doing?
We came up with it on the way home last night.
What's the application for today?
Oh, did you? Come on.
Rupture a friend, and then see what happens. No, I'm kidding. Do you have a better one?
Okay, wait. You could even do it like sometime between now and tomorrow and report back tomorrow. You can send Pepper a text and let him know.
You can.
What's going on?
Yep.
For real. So about 9 months ago, I began to make a list of the people I need to forgive. And I didn't really want to make the list because I didn't like the idea of having to acknowledge that I had been holding grudges. In some cases, with people for 20 years. It's kind of shaming for me. It's like, yeah, I'm just being like that kind of, yes, I enjoy holding grudges. So there, I said it. But I'm also aware that I'm burning a lot of energy containing all that. And that's energy that I then don't have available to do what God wants me to be doing. And so one thing I would invite us to consider doing is just allowing ourselves the freedom and the grace to begin to make a list of where are the ruptures. And it'll be tempting for us to not list the ruptures that we think can never be repaired because I don't want to look at those. It's too painful to look at those. And so I'm not going to put them on my list. But between now and the time that we, complete this series in this season of our podcast, I'd like for us to name these things, just like you said. Right? We're going to name the places where we long for repair, even if it tempts us to discouragement.
Can I ask a clarity question? So are we looking for we're naming places where we long for repair in ourselves, and where we're longing to repair things that we've done, and rupture and repair on both sides?
Right, both, because we can, for many of you who are familiar with this model of internal family systems, we know that there are parts of us that we would much rather kill than have them come into the room. Parts that we would much rather get rid of than to repair the ruptures that we have with ourselves. And so it may mean, who are the people who are going to help me repair me? Do I have the person in my life who's going to help me repair me in order for me to begin to do the repair work with those who are on my list? I cannot do repair work with other people if I am not simultaneously doing the work of repair within me. That I have ruptures with others that are still troubling for me is a direct result of the parts of myself with whom I am not repaired. We're with you. You're with me. right? And so that list is something that we want to see as sacred, something that we want to take care of, something we want to care for. And so it's not just a thing you're going to do internally, not just a thing you're going to do externally, it's a thing that we are going to do together. And that's assignment number one. Assignment number two would be, think about a person that you trust, and think about, of that list, including yourself, think about one or two, maybe three of those relationships, even if they included yourself, that you're going to share with somebody else and say, this is the repair work that I would like to begin to do between now and next year's Connections Conference.
I'm really excited about this season. I think that rupture and repair are vital. I'm looking forward to practicing looking forward to repair. And I just want to thank you for the work you're putting in for this. And Amy, thank you. And since this is a podcast recording, until next time.
Until next time.
I love you guys.
All right. Love you.
Love you too.
All right. Love you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much for coming.
This podcast is produced by Curt Thompson, Pepper Sweeney, and myself, Amy Cella. Audio production and editing is by Keaton Simons. Video production and editing is done by Mark Gould. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on social media at BeingKnownPod. If you like this podcast, tell a friend. If you love this podcast, tell everyone you know. And please like, rate, and review wherever you listen. Be well, be now.